Hi guys, these are the worst 8 movies ever. My name is Greg Knox. I'm joined by my main Obergruppenführer himself, Mr. Tom Dennett-Cook.
Hi everyone. Guten Tag.
Guten Tag. Auf Wiedersehen.
Hail.
No. Wiedersehen. It's a bit inappropriate to say that yet. So, Tom, I've got you on the show again because, as you've seen from the title of the show, we're talking about Nazis.
Yay!
Your favourite subject.
It does seem like that's what I talk about. But I swear I have other interests. But yeah. I do like Nazis.
So, why? Why Nazis?
Why Nazis? They're the ultimate villains. If you look at films, I mean, be it, I think I've said this God knows how many times to various people. Be it children's films,
you
like
can do what you want to the Nazis.
Bedknobs and Broomsticks through to Ilsa. Nazis make great villains. You never feel sorry for them. I think Spielberg was like, the good thing about Nazis in Indiana Jones films is you don't feel sorry for them. You can do what you want to them. And their history's greatest villains. I don't think you get more evil than the real life Nazis. So yeah, you can hate them.
So why do you like Nazis though?
I don't know. I think it's because I'm one of those people who does like horror movies. I always like Jason and Freddy. In real life history, I think people like serial killers all fascinate a lot of people. And I think, yeah, the worst of the bunch in both fiction and reality, and therefore the most interesting if you're into I guess the macabre or the taboo, is going to be the Nazis. So I guess that's my thing.
Hitler is like the real life Jason.
Hitler's like top tier dictator. The Nazis are top tier tyranny. You know, yeah,
top tier tyranny. Yeah. I love it. So yes, I have brought you back on the show to talk about the Nazis. In particular, we're going to be talking about Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, which we are going to talk about in a minute. Mm-hmm. But first of all, what I kind of wanted to do was I wanted to do a kind of brief history of Nazi exploitation.
Crash course.
For anyone who isn't maybe familiar with it. So what is Nazi exploitation or Nazisploitation, to give it its shorter name?
As you probably suspect, is to with the Nazis. Exploitation cinema as a genre in itself has so many different subcategories. I'm sure, you could say blaxploitation, nunsploitation, and basically they're just films designed for people that have that one particular niche, that one itch they have to scratch. I think Nazisploitation started off just as general warsploitation, which is just, as you might imagine, World War II films done on the cheap. But there will be people out there, Greg, who have a specific, I guess it's a combination of they want to watch a war movie, but they really like the Nazis as a fetish, I guess. And Nazisploitation, or perhaps more specifically Nazi sexploitation, is just that done to the extreme. So imagine sexploitation just as a genre in itself.
Yeah.
But even deeper than that, you might have people with uniform fetishes. Even deeper than that, you might have people with S&M fetishes. And you don't get more uniform fetish than an SS uniform. You don't get more S&M than, I guess, a concentration camp setup. So somebody at some point went, right, the absolute limit of this is going to be Nazis in uniforms in concentration camps. I think I've said before, Greg, I don't even like all these movies. I just like the fact that I can't think of a worse subgenre than Nazisploitation, and therefore it fascinates me.
Do you like any of them?
Yeah. I mean, Ilsa, we're going to talk about Ilsa. Ilsa's brilliant. Gestapo's Last Orgy, I think we like.
Yeah.
Some of them are... you have that cliche thing of so bad it's good. Some you actually just go, that is actually quite good. And then, of course, there's the more highbrow stuff. Things like Night Porter and Saloon Kitty, and even Salo, which isn't really Nazisploitation, but it's the same kind of ballpark. It's fascists doing things.
It's fascist.
Those films tend to get respected because I guess they're highbrow and they've got critically acclaimed directors and artists associated with them. But these lowbrow ones wouldn't exist if it wasn't for them. They're kind of the shadow of those films.
True. So what you had, I believe, after World War II, I imagine there probably is a period where it seems that they did mention the Nazis, but it was in passing. Like, you had secret Nazis who were maybe hidden away in South America somewhere. Or,
the guys who escaped by the Odessa network and things like that.
Or you would have a film where it would turn out a character is a Nazi, and that would be like a twist at the end of the film type thing. And then you probably had stuff like, was it I Stole Hitler's Brain, or whatever it's called?
I think it's called They Stole Hitler's Brain.
They Stole Hitler's Brain.
You're talking about the one where it's just a head in a jar.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Hitler's head in a jar.
It's kind of getting towards the 60s where you've got the more, because of the rise of like grindhouse filmmaking, so to speak, like low budget filmmaking. Yeah, you had the more outre ideas, and I guess enough time would have passed following World War II where you could actually sort of have the Nazis as, you know, bad guys, and it would be okay. You wouldn't put people off. And then you had a film called Love Camp 7, or I should say Love Camp 7,
because I do like to say it a lot,
which is the first example of Nazi-sploitation.
Now, I would say one of the reasons you end up with a film like Love Camp 7, you have touched upon it, and that is this weird thing about the Nazis slowly coming into fiction, away from traditional war movies. So you had war movies, obviously. You had things like, you know, The Eagles Landed, Dirty Dozen, things like
Wild
that.
Geese and
Roundabout.
Great Escape.
And they go back even as far as even during the war, like Casablanca, right?
Yeah.
The Nazi villains are always portrayed. The best way to describe it, because I'm not a wordsmith, Greg. The best way to describe it is they come across almost like Bond villains.
Yeah.
They're always quite suave, sophisticated, handsome.
Yeah.
Look good in their uniforms. And I think that's where the Nazi fetish stuff starts. Even if you watch a film like The Eagles Landed, the Nazis are sitting around drinking cognac in these massive chairs in castles. They look the part of the sophisticated, sexy villain. And I think that just snowballs into eventually being Nazi-sploitation. In terms of just how stupid these films can be, so even though it's not the same as Nazi-sploitation, round about the same time you'll get Nazi zombies, and they're all kind of... And films like Ilsa and Shockwaves come from the same weird school of thought, which is the Nazis were doing crazy experiments.
Yeah.
Nobody is ever too knowledgeable about what these experiments are. All we know is that they're fucked up. So they could be making the ultimate super soldier in the form of a zombie, or they could be testing women's vaginas to see how much pain they can take. Whatever the excuse is, they're able to use the cliche of, the Nazis did weird experiments and they were into the occult. And if you watch things made during the war, you have films like Sherlock Holmes taking on the Nazis. Universal Monsters, The Invisible Man takes on the Nazis. Donald Duck takes on the Nazis. So all this stupid shit about what the Nazis get up to and the fact that we don't take them seriously even goes as far back as the war itself.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, you get sexy Nazi villains in straight-up war movies like The Eagles Landed, We Eagles Dare. And then eventually that just... people cut the shit and they just go, right, we just want a Nazi exploitation film. And then somebody comes up with Love Camp 7, which is not the best, but it's the first.
It's not the best, no. But it does introduce a lot of the tropes, shall we say, of these kind of films. So you've got a head Nazi who is sadistic... not so much in Love Camp 7, but progressing onwards they become very sexually deviant, shall we say, and it's normally the film's normally set in a prison camp of some description, which ties them into like women in prison movies.
I was going to say they're basically like I said with the uniform fetish and the S&M. The third element is, as you say, the women in prison movies. These are just women in prison movies a lot of the time.
Yeah.
The early ones especially.
They're just glorified women in prison movies. It's just with Nazis.
Which is weird because I don't like women in prison movies, but I really like Nazi-sploitation.
That's quite interesting. So why don't you like women in prison movies?
I just find them boring. But a lot of Nazi-sploitation films are quite boring.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of Jess Franco women in prison films, and it's literally not that different from Ilsa.
Yeah.
It's women, mostly naked, being tortured. There's an evil kind of warden, and there's probably a sadistic head guard. They all want to escape. They escape in the end, generally.
Do they have swastikas hanging up for no reason?
No,
just
they don't.
randomly in rooms.
And they don't have, women with electrodes attached to their vaginas, unless it's a Jess Franco film, of course.
It's because they're not historical dramas like these films are.
No, not action films as well, like this claims to be.
Yes.
After that, in Italy, as you already mentioned, so we'd had The Damned by can't get his name right. We had The Damned by Luchino Visconti. Got his name right.
Very, very good film.
Which is really good. And then you had The Night Porter by Liliana Cavani, which I have not seen yet. I look forward to watching it very, very soon.
Once you watch The Night Porter, you will look back at all of these and go, oh yeah, I get it now. Because they're all basically ripping off The Night Porter.
Yeah, it's the idea of an S&M relationship between a Nazi guard and a prisoner. And is she Jewish in The Night Porter?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. See, it's interesting. A lot of the exploitation films, it's not really that heavily laid on that they're Jews. It is a little bit, and in also we're going to touch on it in a bit. Is a little bit kind of mentioned that they're Jews or they're people from a lesser race, but. Yeah, in The Night Porter, it's very, very different. It's the same with Sarlo. It's like it may as well be like a completely different universe. But yeah, I really looking forward to watching it.
I always get the two confused. Red Knights of the Gestapo and Gestapo's Last Orgy. What's the one we watched and we thought was brilliant?
So we watched Gestapo's Last Orgy.
That is basically the cheaper
Porter,
version of Night Porter,
with a lot more offensive material in
yes,
it.
A lot more offensive, but that's one of the good ones. If I had to say a good one,
Yeah, and so then we had Ilsa, which we're going to talk about in great detail in a minute.
Yeah,
and it's basically following The Night Porter and Ilsa that basically you had this brief explosion in Italy of these Nazi exploitation films. So most of which we've actually seen, to be honest. So there's SS Experiment Camp, which is okay at best. It's a bit boring. It's not as boring as Love Camp 7.
I think it has brief moments that are very iconic, but then lots of nothing in between.
Yeah. And the plot is very, very heavily derivative of Ilsa as well.
Yeah.
We had Salon Kitty, which we already mentioned, which is pretty good. It's a little bit more highbrow.
That's higher. Yeah, that's much higher.
Yeah, you got Deported Women of the SS Special Section, which is a great title.
Fucking it's a title that keeps going, isn't it?
Which is all right from what I remember. I have watched it. It's okay. Gestapo's Last Orgy, which is the most difficult to watch in a lot of ways. There's a lot of very of all the video nasties, which were Nazisploitation films, that's the one which I can never see ever in a million years getting unbanned totally. And there's The Beast in Heat, which we've already talked about on the show. The Beast
in Heat.
Which is quite a fun film, if you're in the mood for that kind of thing.
I don't know if anyone's in the mood for that. That's got to be in your... If you ever do a top worst date movies that you've ever done, that's probably going to win.
A book just fell from the shelf. So
that was probably my fault.
It could be a poltergeist.
Could be, hope not.
A ghost of a Nazi sort of offended that we're talking about it. It's quite interesting because you've always said that... real life kind of severe right wing, like far right, that's it. Far right wingers or neo-Nazis or Nazi sympathizers would hate these films.
Yeah, these are not. Yeah, if you say to somebody, as people would sometimes say to me, so what?
So Tom,
why do you like Nazi stuff? The implication being you must be a Nazi yourself, and I'm like, you need to watch these things. The Nazis in these are not portrayed as morally superior Aryan supermen. They're sexual deviants, they're arseholes, they're cheats, they're liars, they get up to some horrible shit. And I just... Yeah, exactly. I just think... I don't even know. Can't even add to that. I think you have to see these films to go, if... It's a bit like... Nunsploitation does not paint nuns in a good way.
No.
Nazisploitation is not about celebrating the Third Reich in any shape or form. It really is the best anti-Nazi propaganda out there because it just presents them all as horrible deviants.
It's quite interesting that you mentioned that. So I'm doing a show very soon on this very channel about Romper Stomper, which is kind of tied to like Nazi exploitation in a way, because they're neo-Nazi skinheads.
Yeah.
And I have a theory. Well, it's not really a theory. Basically, if you watch a lot of those films, of which there aren't that many, but if you watch that, American History X, and films like that, they can't be seen to be sympathising with anyone with far right ideologies, because they just can't. It's even if they kind of did a little bit in secret, you just can't, because it's just not palatable, and it would be seen as morally offensive.
Yeah.
So it's the same with these kind of films. It's like, well, all the Nazis have to be horrible, because otherwise it's like, well, you couldn't have, you know, a film which was purporting to be like, oh, the Nazis had some good ideas. No, it's just never going to happen. And these
films especially, you did hit the nail on the head earlier, where these are just women in prison films.
Yeah.
They sometimes, like Ilsa, will start off pretending to be a historical warning, like the World at War or something TV series. Like, this has been made to teach everyone about the horrors of the Third Reich. I'm like, that's not what this is about. This was for like midnight screenings and porno theatres. That's what this was for, you know.
Yeah. And also, I mean, this movement, this Nazi exploitation movement, did not last very long. Similar to the cannibal boom, which also happened in Italy, it only seemed to last for a couple of years. Now, do you think that was because, I mean, clearly it would have been because the films didn't make money. That would be the main reason.
I think it's novelty, and they cashed in the novelty while they could. I think it's interesting that it's Italy. I don't know if, this isn't even a theory. I'm just going to throw this out there. But obviously, Italy was allied with the Nazis during the war.
Yeah,
they were fascists. So I wonder if there was a bit of, I don't know, Italian guilt or taboo tabbooness about this in Italy, and whether that is one of the reasons why it blew up so quick and one of the reasons why it disappeared so quick, perhaps. I remember reading when I was studying this sort of stuff at uni that like the Italians have a weird relationship with that period in their history. Unlike Germany, which is kind of really addressed that the Third Reich in the being serious for a moment here, Greg. Germany's addressed that period. The Japanese have addressed that period. Because Italy kind of swapped sides, they've never really fully come to terms with that. So in the 70s, when this shit still would have been quite fresh, it would have only been like 20 years earlier. You know, a lot of older Italian people, not even older Italian people, but I guess middle-aged Italian people would still have memories of the Nazis being in Italy and Mussolini and things like that. So I would love to speak. I would love to speak to the people who made these films. Maybe not Ilsa, because I think it's an American production, but all those Italian ones must have been a weird experience to make if you're an Italian who lived through Mussolini and then the Nazi occupation and things like that. That's my serious moment over with. We can now go back to talking silly.
We can go back to making fun of the film again. I also think that there isn't really a lot you can do with films like that, because similar to the cannibal films, there's only really one type of film that you can make, and then once you've done it a couple of times, it's just
these are all just women being experimented on. I think there's something to be said for basically taking a dying genre and then Nazifying it. So they took women in prison films that were running out of steam, and then they added an extra couple of years to it by making them set in concentration camps. That was a novelty for a bit. Same with zombies. Zombies, there's only so many zombie films you can make. Well, what if they're Nazi zombies?
Yeah.
So you add a few more years on the zombie subgenre.
Wolfenstein 3D and all that.
Like I said, the ultimate villains are the Nazis. So you've made women in prison films a little bit more interesting by making them concentration camps. And then you've made zombies a little bit more interesting by making them Nazis. It only stretches out those things for a bit longer, but there must be a reason behind it. Maybe not the reason, but a reason.
Also, I mean, unlike cannibal films, you wouldn't have someone like Eli Roth suddenly turn around and go, you know what, I'd really like to do my own Nazi exploitation film today.
The closest we got, Greg, was Rob Zombie's trailer for Werewolf Women of the SS, which is beautiful, and I think we all want him to make that instead of more bloody Firefly family movies and Halloween movies, you know.
I don't think he's likely to do a Halloween movie again.
No.
Firefly...
I think he's done with that as well, unfortunately.
Well...
Because of Sid.
Probably,
Sid.
Yeah, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Yeah, Free From Hell wasn't that great, unfortunately. Not that I was a huge fan of the first two anyway, but it just wasn't a fan, let's put it that way. So that is your brief history of the Nazisploitation subgenre. So would you say Ilsa is your favourite of these films?
Essentially, yes. It's I don't want to say it's my favourite, because I guess if you're like a fanboy, you want to be cool, you don't want to name this one because this is the most widely known. This is the American one, so I'm sure real fans would be like, I only watch the Italian ones. But as we were saying beforehand, Greg, this one's quite easy to access.
Yeah,
which sounds weird when we're talking about Nazi women in prison films, but this one has the most basic story. This one is essentially a mixture of softcore porn and action sequences, so it's very easy to digest. Whereas a lot of Nazisploitation has that weird Italian Euro trash thing where the sex scenes are awkward, and then there's rape scenes that are extraordinarily uncomfortable, and then there's really lame torture scenes, and nothing is really edited together well. Whereas this is a well put together American production. It's quite clearly though an American production.
Yeah, it's Canadian actually. Because I just
when I say American, I mean the Americas, obviously. Yeah.
North
Sorry,
American.
Canadian then. Yeah.
So yeah, but you're right. It's more polished than a Italian production. It doesn't have the same issues of kind of post-production dubbing.
I think I like Gestapo's Last Orgy or this equally, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's not including things like Night Porter.
Yeah,
I just mean the trash. Yeah.
You can't really say the Night Porter or Sire because that's kind of cheating.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Plus,
so I wouldn't. Yeah,
I wouldn't really classify them, although they're in the same kind of universe. They're at very, very opposite ends of the spectrum compared to Gestapo's Lost Orgy, which I would say is probably my favourite.
Yeah, Gestapo's Lost Orgy is very good.
It says a lot about me.
If somebody hadn't seen any of them, I would say either watch Saloon Kitty, which is a nice middle ground between highbrow and lowbrow,
or Ilsa. Brass is quite talented.
Yeah. Or Ilsa, just because it is bare bones.
It's
easy.
The most accessible as well. Yeah. So, interestingly, Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS is directed by Don Edmonds. It's a Canadian film, as we've established, 1975. Now, the producer of this film, David F. Friedman, he produced a lot of Herschel Gordon Lewis films, so Blood Feast and 2000 Maniacs and films like that.
Good pedigree.
So he's someone who's obviously well known in the exploitation field, and he had also previously produced Love Camp 7.
So he's been to this territory.
Yes, so this is mining previous territory, although, I mean, Love Camp 7 was 1968, and there wasn't a boom following Love Camp 7. You'll be shocked to hear, for anyone who's seen Love Camp 7, that did not, in fact, kind of start this...
maybe like a pre-Nazisploitation film.
Yeah, it's similar how something like Black Christmas didn't start the slasher movie boom. It was kind of Halloween.
Somebody
and then
saw that film and then went, hey, that's good.
Friday the 13th, yeah. So he's kind of, the man with the money kind of behind this kind of film.
But they give him a fake name, don't they?
Yes.
In the opening thing, which
at the beginning.
Bizarre. I didn't even know that.
Now, the reason that I wanted to cover this film, one is, hey, it's Tom and it's Nazis.
Hey.
It's quite an interesting kind of real life sort of coincidence, shall we say. So the star of this film is Dyanne Thorne. Now, she passed away not that long ago.
No,
Which is quite
do this in her honour. This show's in her honour.
Yes.
Her and Sid.
So this
Let's do this for her and Sid.
Sid Haig, who's not in this film.
No, but fuck it.
Yeah, why not? He is Sid Haig. He can be in it as well. So, Tom, what is the story? Which is very, very brief story.
It's a brief story. It's
of
allegedly based on real events, which is the mark of every good exploitation film, is that it's based on true events. In a nutshell, Ilsa is a commandant of a camp. She's also a scientist, I suppose. She's trying to prove that women can endure just as much pain as men, so therefore should be allowed in the armed forces. Any good schoolboy knows that the Nazis had a very sexist view of women. They were not military people. They were just there to breed. So Ilsa's trying to prove that in the dying days of the war, that if there's a man shortage, then get the women to fight. She proves this through various experiments of torturing women to prove their pain threshold. And while she's doing this, she's also having sex with lots of men. She is having sex with lots of men because she can't find any man who can keep up with her in the bedroom. But she does come across one man, an American, who is of German descent, and basically he can outdo her in sex. So, but the core story is she is trying to prove that women are just as capable of men as enduring pain through a series of experiments.
So you could remake this today and make it like a feminist film.
Yeah. I mean,
in a strange kind of way.
She's kind of trying to prove a Nazi feminist point, I guess.
That strange kind of crossover between National Socialism and feminism.
It hasn't been done before, but we could give it a go.
That would be amazing. So we've already referred to it a couple of times. One of my favourite things about this film, and it's more in hindsight because when you see the film and if you happen to watch it again afterwards, it looks even more ridiculous, is the disclaimer at the very start of the film, which has the last sentence, which is, "We dedicate this film with the hope that these heinous crimes will never occur again." Basically it says something to the effect of like, this is based on actual kind of science experiments that took part at the time, and these are a composite of real Nazis that we put together.
If you listen to the people, if you listen to the people involved in making the film, they will say it's based on what's her name, the bitch of Belsen or something like that, like an actual female commandant. But I think the relation this film has to her is that Ilsa's a woman and this person was a woman. There is no real connection to them other than this other person was notorious for being a female commandant, which is rare, and being an extraordinary sadist. And I think they just took that little nugget of truth and then added lots of nonsense. And like I said earlier about Nazi, I was about to do inverted commas on the radio. Nazi experiments being any old bizarre,
could be whatever.
It could be UFOs, it could be zombies, it could be this, it could be sexual experiments. They've just made it up.
Although, you know, Nazi zombie experiments in those
did
films,
definitely happen.
There's a lot more kind of consistency with those because it's like there's an end result that kind of at least makes sense.
Well, one of the reasons I do like this one is because there is a theory behind her torture experiments. A lot of these Nazisploitations, there is no reason for the torture, whereas she actually has an objective. She is trying to prove that women can fight, that they can endure a pain. She has a purpose. She has a motive. Let's put it, motive, that's the word. She has a motive. Whereas a lot of the time, these people don't have a reason to be doing what they're doing.
No, I mean, off the top of my head, I mean, SS Experiment Camp, even though it's called SS Experiment Camp, and the experiments are wacky and don't appear to have any kind of meaning whatsoever. There isn't even a reason for them to be doing the experiments, from what I remember. In Gestapo's Lost Orgy, there are kind of experiments, but they're more tortures more than anything else.
Sometimes go, this is an experiment lab. I'm like, are you sure? Because a moment ago it was a brothel. And they go, yeah, sometimes it's a brothel, sometimes it's an experiment lab, you know.
And my favourite, obviously, The Beast in Heat. There are experiments in that, but fuck knows what
are they trying to prove?
Do in that.
The thing with the guinea pigs, stupid. What are they trying to prove?
Yeah, like guinea pigs will eat through your stomach.
Yeah, guinea pigs can fight just as well as men. I don't know.
Yeah, although yes, there are experiments, and there's a weird kind of, I don't want to call it a hypocrisy as such, but normally American films get accused of, like, they'll show violence, so you can be as violent as you want, but anything to do with sex, they're like, oh no, we'll be really kind of chaste.
Yeah.
This is the other way around. So literally within 0 minutes of this film starting, you've got basically nudity, there's sex going on, and you see, you know, naked woman with Ilsa, sort of huge tits, you know, on display or whatever. Every one of the female prisoners is naked at one point. They're literally fully naked. Everything, you can see everything. But the violence, weirdly, a lot of it, although you can tell what's going on, it's off screen, or it's not full. It's not like watching a Lucio Fulci film, for example. It's not all, you can't see,
and it's not gory, which is weird.
Probably for budgetary reasons, I would imagine. And it's not ridiculously gory. So you've got this weird kind of, I don't know, I guess which makes the film kind of seem more like a sexploitation film. Which is what it is, in fairness. Although, can you imagine anyone finding this titillating?
Well, I mean, I think it would... These are sort of created as weird little fetish films, and there will be people out there that love it for that reason. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, when we were watching the film just now before we pressed record, really, there are 3 films going on in this at the same time. So you've got basically a woman performing all these experiments, and she basically wants to get the approval of her superiors to basically, give her, like, yes, well done for doing these experiments. There's this other story about this same woman who basically is this total man-eater who, like, if you think of it in these terms, essentially she's, had sex with all these beta men, and then she meets this total Chad alpha male who, like, who is like, oh my god, he's like the best fuck ever, and like she wants to, wants him all for herself, and she wants to, even talks about having children after the war. He's that much of an alpha male that, like, my god, like, I just can't imagine.
I don't think he's going to want to marry and settle down with you after the war.
But he's a Chad though. That's the thing. Like, women don't think straight around Chad, clearly. And there's also this prison escape film, which is slapdash as all fuck. It's like there's a plan to escape, which they seem to take most of the film to kind of work out, and then it's just,
and then they
fuck it, we'll just
run out the door and start stabbing.
It's absolutely
but that's
hilarious.
The thing. That's the other thing. Another reason why this is good is because if you're not enjoying one story, don't worry, they're going to go to the other story pretty quickly.
So, as well as the lots and lots of nudity, it does have a lot of tropes that we have seen in kind of other Nazisploitation movies, including swastika flags hanging from walls.
Just hanging randomly. Which you're more likely to see in American History X or Romper Stomper than you are in an actual war movie. They don't just blue tack them to the wall.
I'm assuming real Nazis, like, in these concentration camps, they probably didn't have swastikas really anywhere. I'm assuming they'd want to be somewhat incognito so that people wouldn't know what's going on.
I think real Nazis know they're Nazis and don't need to have the flags hanging in there. She has one hanging above her bed. Like, she's the commandant of the camp. She probably gets sick of seeing swastikas. And when she comes back to her chamber, she probably just wants to chill.
I swear there's a swastika in like 2/3 of the shots in this film.
Yeah, I love swastikas just hanging up for no reason in these films.
Or photos of Hitler, or pictures of Hitler. There's pictures of Hitler in loads of scenes as well.
My favourite, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but when they're in like the operation room and you have the operational curtain going around the wall, and then you have the framed picture of Hitler hanging on the curtain. Not even on the wall, just on the curtain. And you're like, that's more
How
effort
did
than
they hang it up there?
How is it staying up there, Greg? And that's more effort than it's worth. There's no need for it.
No, there really isn't. It's just,
we're
Nazis.
Swastika armbands when you're almost entirely naked, but you still have to wear the armband.
I love it. So, when you talk about like Nazis being fetishized and things like that, is this one of the films that is responsible for that?
It's probably not responsible. It's chicken and egg. What came first? Nazi fetishes, and therefore they made this film? Or did this film make Nazi fetishes? It definitely already existed prior to this.
Right.
But then this film just exploded it even further. It became much bigger after this. Ilsa is iconic. People who haven't seen any other Nazisploitation film will know of Ilsa, even if they haven't seen it. You know, you wouldn't have had Rob Zombie's Werewolf Women of the SS if it wasn't for this. But Nazi fetish stuff existed before this. That's why this film got made. You know.
And this film was a financial success as well.
It was,
From what I read up, it played for 6 months in was it 78th Street, whatever, in New York, the Exploitation cinemas back in the day when it came out.
And that was a big deal back then, you know.
Yeah, and I imagine obviously it would have been very popular in Italy, hence why they ripped it off so much. And it had sequels, which is another way you can tell.
Sequels in the loosest definition of the term, but sequels nonetheless.
Interestingly, because Ilsa dies right at the end of the film, so somehow she's able to come back. in different parts of the world as well. But
different parts of the world at different times.
Yeah, which we're going to go into in a minute. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, of all these types of films, it's probably the most financially successful.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that. I don't have the facts and figures in front of me, but I imagine it probably is. Although, interestingly, not a video nasty, which I always found a bit weird that you've got, all right, I mean, the 4 that are video nasties, okay, but this film, which is way more well-known than the other 4,
Yeah.
and interestingly not Italian, yeah, I was just found that a bit
Is
strange.
it like a psycho shower scene thing where you never actually see anything? It's all done off camera and it's all edited in such a way where it's in your head. Because you think about the castration scene in this, you don't see anything.
No, you don't. It's true.
A lot of the stuff in this, whereas some of the later ones, yeah, they really shove it in your face. This. I mean, I don't want to compare it to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but you know how like they notoriously found that very difficult to edit because you don't. A bit like the shower scene, it's all in your mind. It's all quick edits, so you think you see far more than you actually do, and for a censor, that's a nightmare. So maybe they just couldn't censor this, you know.
Or possibly the only thing else I can think of is similar to something like the New York Ripper. Like, it just was never allowed in the country to begin with, because it does have a pretty, like, Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS is pretty blatantly obvious kind of what that's going to be about, just from the title alone.
And compared to, another reason why I like this film above many others, as we've discussed before, Greg, so many others are called, like, Love Camp 7, Experiment Love Camp,
SS Camp 5, Women's Hell.
They're all called something camp. And they're all very interchangeable, whereas this, just the she-wolf, I think the word she-wolf of the SS sounds iconic. Even if you've never heard of it before, somebody just said the name, that would stand out amongst all the others. You would want to see this film.
Yeah, it is also, I mean, compared to... You're right, when we talked about SS Experiment Camp, there are a couple of parts in that are quite iconic, and some of the experiments just don't make any sense, so it's kind of laughable, but... It's quite dull. With this, in a strange way, although it's really not that interesting. It's, you know, if you look at it, if we're comparing this to, you know, a proper film, I don't want to say that because that makes me sound like
I know
a
what
snob,
you mean, yeah.
but if we're comparing this to, you know, most other films, okay, the acting in it is appalling.
Yeah.
The dialogue is appalling.
Yeah.
The way the film is shot is not that great. A lot of the shots are too dark. Literally, the second shot of the film is Dyanne Thorne in the shower, and it's like it is pitch black almost. You can't see. Like, no one in real life would get in the shower almost in the dark. You know, it's just not a very
Maybe it was a
film.
blackout, Allied bombing.
But it is kind of enjoyable. I guess it's certainly more enjoyable than most of the other films of this kind that I've seen, bar like the others, which are just more outrageous, really, more than anything else.
I think that one of the problems with exploitation is the more they go on, the more a subgenre goes on, or a cycle, whatever you want to call it.
Where can you go?
The more they have to outdo the previous one, so they become more outrageous. They cut to the chase a lot quicker with if it's torture or cannibal stuff, if it's animal torture.
Yeah.
You know, the last few of any cycle, in my opinion, tend to be dreadful. Whereas the early ones tend to, with the exception of Love Camp 7, the early ones tend to be a little bit more creative and have a bit more spark to them.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds like such a fanboy thing to say. Oh, I like the early stuff best. But I think it does actually apply to exploitation, because exploitation, almost by definition, becomes more exploitative as a cycle goes on.
Yeah, I mean, comparing it to something like, I mean, even like, same with like Jally and slasher films. I suppose once you've kind of done everything that you can possibly do. What happened with Jallo, interestingly, is as it got to, it's always the late 70s, early 80s.
It was a great time, that period.
Where, you know, everything got more sleazy and more violent, and then it's like, well, where can you go from here, really? So
you have to stick to the formula, but then you have to outdo the formula. So you just keep turning things up till you turn up to 11. Then you go beyond 11, you know. So
you get stuff like Play Motel and Giallo e Venezia and New York Ripper, and Strip Nude for Your Killer and stuff like that, where, yeah, literally you can't really get any more violent or any more sleazy without it. Well, you can't get more sleazy without it literally becoming porn, as in hardcore porn with penetration shots and everything, which actually did happen in Giallo, actually. Would have been quite weird. Well, I suppose it would have been even more worse if anything, something like that happened here in these kind of films, or it somehow got even more violent, which is almost impossible to imagine, really. So,
but who would have thought you would start off with like sophisticated, sexy Nazis?
It's always the way it goes, isn't
sophisticated, sexy Nazis in films like Casablanca, and then 30 years later you would have films like The Beast in Heat. Who would have thought that that progression would have happened? But it's constantly outdoing the previous representation.
Yeah, it does. I'm surprised we've not had, like, you know, given who the bogeymen in the world are, or have been over the last few years, we haven't had, like, you know, Arab-sploitation.
I bet there is something out there. I mean, in the 90s...
Zombie, I guess.
Yeah, Zombie. Yeah,
kind
perfect
of.
example.
That was
and
the only one
in the 90s, you had films like what was it? Arnold Schwarzenegger as a double agent, and
that could be a number of films.
Yeah. Basically, a bunch of
True Lies.
True Lies.
Oh yeah,
where you had the villains were Iranian or just generic Middle Eastern villains. So you have weird cycles where who's public enemy number one, and they stick them in a bunch of movies.
Are we going to get Trump-sploitation at some point?
I hope so.
Soon.
I hope so. I would love that.
Trump-sploitation, Boris-sploitation.
Brexploitation.
Wow.
That fits in. That sounds like a word.
Yeah. I think I even pitched this. Like, do you remember we did the Fright Fest show on the Lament Configuration? I saw that film, which I said was basically about Brexit. Like, it wasn't literally about, but where like an undercurrent is about Brexit, and it's kind of like that. So maybe Ken Loach, his films are kind of Brexploitation. Yeah. They're about poor people who are oppressed and stuff like that. So that's most of his films, though.
If you ever get a chance to interview him and you go, your films are Brexploitation. Me and my mate were talking about Nazi fetishism, and we figured.
So, I mean, if you like women with big breasts, this is a good film for that.
Yeah.
If you like women being tortured in weird ways, I guess. If you're into that kind of film, if there's something desperately wrong with you, you've got, and men too. So we got a man being castrated.
It's equal opportunity.
We've got, now this was really funny, a woman being scared to have her pubic hair shaved off.
Yeah, that's the least of your fucking worries in this movie.
Which was, a woman being, we see the end result of her being injected with, like, syphilis, apparently.
Yeah, they do like a sort of... They do a tour of like the best of tortures, and there's gangrene, there's syphilis, there's a pressure thing where we just kind of burst your blood vessels. There's like little
that happens in a couple of these films. Like I swear in SS Experiment Camp, there's the gas pressure where they just turn the atmospheres up too high and it kills someone.
Well, at the risk of being a little bit nerdy, they do try and pay some lip service to actual experiments. So they did do stuff like that because they were trying to test how much pressure a pilot could take, like how high a plane could go and how quickly it could dive by air pressure, and you couldn't really do that on actual pilots.
No.
So they did it they did those experiments in camps. So it's weird how there's lip service to historical facts, whilst at the same time a deliberate screwing over of actual history to make a cheap exploitation film. These films can't. One of the reasons I find them fascinating is because they can't decide what they are. They present themselves as being historical, and then they just go off into a weird softcore porn area, and then they go back to being historical, and yeah.
Yeah, so apart from that, how much historical accuracy... It sounds like such a stupid fucking question to ask. How much historical accuracy is there in these experiments? Or is it literally like, what can we do? Or I know, like, we'll stick... Well, because most of the experiments in this film seem to involve kind of sharp or electric objects being stuck in women's vaginas.
In this particular film? Hardly fucking any. But... Okay, so we did the pressure one, which is to do with pilots.
All right, there's an experiment involving hot water.
Hot water, which is supposed to be when tanks are on fire. I don't know why they're on fire with hot water, but apparently they are. they do not in this one, but in other ones they do one with the opposite, freezing cold temperatures.
That was SS experiment camp. Yeah,
they do. I mean, a whole bunch do them with STDs because soldiers would get STDs off of prostitutes and brothels that they went to. So the SS would actually try and find cures for STDs. But in order to do that, they would have to infect prisoners. So, like I said, there is a very loose explanation for why these experiments are happening.
No one was tied up and then had guinea pigs.
Nobody had like unnecessary nipple clamps just for the sake of it, or guinea pigs,
or
or that one experiment where they want to see who can take the most pain in this film, a man or a woman. So they just whip them both.
Yeah,
that is just straight up S&M. That's just a straightforward S&M fantasy that they just wanted to shoot, and they called it an experiment. I don't know who was keeping any records in that experiment. Did you see a clipboard? I didn't.
No. Whereas at least in SS experiment camp, they did at least have the pretense of like they had doctors with clipboards, like you say, making notes.
When the general comes up and he's like, "I want to see the results of your experiments," there are no results. She hasn't been keeping any records. There's one file cabinet that we see that is never opened.
Yeah, imagine doing that, like, chemistry when you were at school. It's like, did you write down any results for your experiment? Nah, I just didn't write anything down. I just did it. Innit?
Here is my experiment. And then you boil a frog. And they go, what does that prove? I don't know. I didn't write anything down. I mean, that's what this film is. That's the experiments in this film, to a degree.
And there was another scene, the infamous scene with the Hitler picture, like on a curtain. There was surgery being done with no anaesthetic or anything like that. I'm assuming the Nazis would have done something like that.
Yeah, they did. I mean,
Angel of Death by Slayer said they did.
I was going to make an Angel of Death reference, but I didn't know if that was appropriate. But you did it, so I don't care.
That's all right.
I mean, the basic reason they didn't use anaesthetic is because they didn't view the prisoners as people. They didn't care. In this film, they kind of imply it's all part of the experiment of whether they can take the pain or not. But generally speaking, they didn't bother with anaesthetic because they didn't view the prisoners as people.
Just lazy. Just
just lazy.
Costs too much money.
Saving money, basically.
Yeah. Although I would say that this is less hilarious than something like The Beast in Heat. And when I say hilarious, I am being very kind of tongue-in-cheek because, as we kind of mentioned a couple of times already, you can't really take a film like this seriously.
No.
If you do, you have to be a really sad cunt to take a film like this seriously. Like, come on, there are way more offensive... It sounds kind of a bit surreal to say this, but there are way more offensive films than this. This is essentially a sexploitation film where it's like, they've got a bunch of people in Nazi uniforms.
This is a surreal end of cinema. It is very difficult to, when you're watching it, your emotions are all over the place. Because, these are, loosely, these are based on real things, or at the very least, this is a concentration camp, this is an SS guard. So even if this scenario is not based on anything real, you are just seeing representations of offensive imagery. So, but at the same time, it's ridiculous. It's over the top. It's S&M. It's electrified dildos. I don't think we've even mentioned that yet. So it's absurd. I would say absurd rather than surreal. Absurdism in the Camus sense of the word. Of this is just it's so offensive. You can't take offense because it's not real. And I know it's not real. It's so not real that I can't begin to take offense.
It's like how...
I'm not going to say that to somebody who was in a concentration camp, but you know what I mean?
Nor should you.
Yeah.
I would not recommend doing that. It's like how Peter Jackson, when he did Brain Dead, how they didn't censor any of Brain Dead, even though it's possibly the goriest film ever, because it's clearly so over the top and cartoonish. There's no way anyone could take it seriously or get offended by it, and it's quite fun. Now, I'm not suggesting any of these films are fun. I mean, some of them I find fun because that's just I'm inclined to feel that way. I mean, some of the stuff in Gestapo's Last Orgy, I can see how someone would get offended by that because that's explicitly about Jewish people, stuff like that. There's nothing really in this about that aspect of the Nazis or anything like that. But I mean, there are kind of aspects of, shall we say, maybe not great filmmaking that I found quite funny. So as I mentioned, so the lighting's not great. There was an inappropriate zoom that I found quite funny. There's a conversation between our American character and I think he's meant to be Italian. There's a guy who's a prisoner who's been there for a bit longer. Mario.
That's how you know he's Italian. They gave him the most Italian name they could.
We're having a conversation at the end of the scene that just zooms in on Mario's face for no reason. I thought that was hilarious. Some of the music is hilarious. So when a character appears out of nowhere, they play the sort of sound they probably play in like a daytime sort of 70s TV show. It's like da da
da da da kind of thing. Yeah.
There's the radio host who is the radio always seems to be on while Ilsa is having sex with someone. And it's the guy with the lamest German accent in the whole film.
Yeah.
It's like a low level, kind of like
pretty
bad
much,
foreign
yeah.
accent.
This feels very low.
It's so low.
I mean, I think we mentioned before we started, it's shot on the set of Hogan's Heroes.
Yes,
which is kind of like the American version of a low. So it's another reason why it's difficult to take this seriously. It's like if Peter Rogers of the Carry On films made an exploitation film, that's what this feels like, you know.
And like just some of the dialogue, I mentioned the dialogue is bad. It's just the exposition is just so lumped and kind of
so
lazy.
much exposition. I love it in films like this when someone's talking on the phone and you basically are told what the other person's saying. They're like, "Yes, General. Yes, we will see you tomorrow. Oh, you're going to be here at midday, are you? Oh, that's nice." It's like, thanks for telling the audience. The just what you were saying about the music when. All the little drum playing, all the military
really
drums,
you, didn't it?
all the time. It was just excessive.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt they really thought about the music too much.
And they're just pressing that button over and over again. Play the drums.
Yeah, they could have borrowed it from Love Camp 7, as you said.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, there's a line that Ilsa said, which I'm trying to find in my notes, but I'm pretty sure the Commandant said it in Love Camp 7 as well, where she says,
suggesting multiverse.
"You are here to serve the Third Reich. That is your only function." I'm pretty sure the Commandant does say something like that in Love Camp 7 as well. So maybe,
that's the kind of see you next Wednesday thing.
Yeah,
it comes up in all his films.
What else did I find funny?
You like the what do you call it? Screen wipe?
Yeah, oh god. There's a montage in this film that exists for no reason.
The montage of nothing.
And they use the screen wipe that they use in Star Wars just literally about 5 times in the space of a minute. Why have you done
2 years
this?
before Star Wars.
It's like
maybe George Lucas watched this and went, I can do a better job.
Well,
and then he made Star Wars and the rest is history.
Yeah, you say that. I wonder have you seen Martyrs?
Yeah.
Martyrs is essentially like, you know, the woman who gets tortured for ages and can just take it.
Right.
I wonder if Pascal Laugier, before he made Martyrs rather, saw this and go, "Oh, that's a great idea. I'll just have a woman and I'll see how much pain that she can take and then she will see God or whatever." I mean, I love Martyrs. I haven't watched it for years. I'm too scared to because it's actually very, very disturbing, unlike this film. But yeah, it does kind of make me wonder because it's like that is a very similar kind of story in a way. It's obviously handled very differently in Martyrs.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder.
It's possible. People take little nuggets from films, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, people do in sort of a very strange way. Like, you know, hey, maybe George Lucas did watch this and get the screen.
What I love
wipes.
about the screen wipe stuff, as you say, like, no, when we say it adds nothing, we really mean there's just some of the inmates doing some gardening. Because the Commandant Ilsa, she has like a little
people
garden.
Just in rows,
so
just
people
being
just
at.
pushing wheelbarrows around and planting some flowers. People being shouted at, people lining up, and then we get back to the story. Like I remember you saying it was like, are they getting ready for the general?
The general, yeah.
Are they getting like the garden ready for the general, or are they lining up because his car's about to pull in?
No, he just doesn't.
No, we're not. Because the next scene is what's her name in bed. So a day has passed since this montage. So it's just a day in the life of the camp.
Yeah, although the general, apart from Ilsa herself, is the highlight of this film.
He's a bloody great character.
Now, the actor's name is Richard Kennedy. Now, some of the actors in this film appear in... Weirdly, they seem to appear in 2 other films that released around about the same time. So there's The Witch It Came From the Sea, which is very different from this. It's an American... It wasn't a video nasty, but it's one of those where I'm not entirely sure why it was a video nasty. It's more like kind of a bit of a surreal sort of psychodrama from like a woman's point of view. So the general in this film, and also the scientist with the moustache who coughs.
The cougher.
Yeah, they play policemen in that film.
Does he cough in that?
I don't believe he does, no. And also, a lot of actors in this film appear in a film called Drive-In Massacre, which is a proto-slasher film from the 70s, which is fucking terrible. It's actually one of the worst slasher films I've ever seen in my life. Again, 1976, so yeah, very weird kind of... I don't know. It's
what a time to be alive.
What time to be in the American
cinema.
exploitation film industry here. And we haven't mentioned kind of probably, involving the general, Golden Shower.
The Golden Shower scene. So,
which is a weird one because there's a Golden Shower in Sarlo, but that was a lot more explicit.
What year was Sarlo?
It was a 75, so the same year as this.
Same year, okay. I don't know, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's... I don't want to say it's better done in Sarlo, but it is.
Well, yeah.
When people talk about this film...
Dyanne Thorne's face as she looks really like...
When people talk about this film, if they're very brief, they say 2 things. Electrified dildo, golden shower. And then you're like, I'm in. I have to see this film. And the golden shower scene of this is so bizarre because I don't think... They don't say golden shower. They don't explicitly set it up as that's what's going to happen. Obviously, you get the sound effect, and as you say, a head going down. But he doesn't say, I like women pissing on me, or will you piss on me? He just goes off on one about how he likes dominant women, and lies on the floor, and she just pisses on him.
It's all very read between the lines kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you could quite easily get it.
Subtext. Intelligent.
Yeah. You could quite easily misinterpret what he wants you to do because it's like, powerful women, it's like, okay.
He's like, take off your trousers. He lies on the ground. He says, I like powerful women. He could be just like, have sex with me or sit on my face. But she's like, I'm going to piss on you. And you're like, okay. And then it moves on to the next thing. There's no time to process what's happened. And as we say, next day, he's in his uniform still. So I'm like, does his uniform smell of piss? I don't know.
It's all.
Does he have a spare uniform? Whatever.
A couple of bizarre touches just before we kind of end on this.
And on this high note.
On this high note, at the end of the film, so our main character, sort of this American character, this girl that he randomly decides that he liked, or she liked him, or whatever. They decide to leave, and their friend Mario, they're like, "Come with us, Mario," and he's like, I've got a dick, I can't leave. Sorry.
I'm staying here.
It's like, sorry. The world is not meant for a man with no penis.
Mario's whole escaping the prison storyline. They just say
that was just
the 3 storylines. His is, I'm going to escape from this camp. And then, after setting up this slightly
elaborate escape plan, which
decides after they've liberated the camp, I'm going to stay here. Like, what do you mean stay here?
Yeah.
Like, and do what?
What I love about this film, and again, other films, namely SS Experiment Camp mainly, but they all seem to have this plot where, let's say it's a 90-minute film, they've got what they need to do in the first 80 minutes, and they suddenly realise, oh fuck, all these people have to die and they have to escape.
Yeah.
It's the same in Love Camp 7 as well, actually, where, like literally about half the people in the film die in the space of 2 minutes because they've just got to, we've got to all escape.
We've got enough money for one action sequence.
One action. That's why it counts as an action film.
So there's a bunch of explosions, only one of which is explained, where he throws like a sort of Molotov cocktail. Then other buildings just explode. Slow motion sequence where they're firing the guns and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like, we want there to be a little action sequence because it's a war movie, and this is the 70s, and people by this point are used to war movies essentially being action movies.
Yeah.
So they shoehorn in an action movie ending. And yeah, everybody dies.
Dies.
Apart from our 2 main people. I say our 2 main people, the American and whoever the hell she is.
Yeah. Because that's the thing about these films, is that a lot of the time they don't really bother giving any of the prisoners kind of characters, bar one.
The American guy, who I think is called Wolf, which is fucking brilliant. He's the only one really with a personality.
Well, and he has a special talent that is apparently like, this X-Men-like ability to just not come.
He's like, well, he can come, but he can control when he comes. So that's how he's able to out sex Ilsa, why he doesn't get his dick cut off, because she's like, oh my god, this man can outlast me in bed somehow.
Yeah.
Like, he can't just be a stud. He has to, or Chad. He can't.
Chad,
he has to have, as you say, an X-Men ability to control his orgasm, because this film isn't crazy enough without that.
No, I guess not. It's a bad date movie, isn't it? Let's face it.
Oh, I think it's a good,
It's a good date.
bad date movie.
All right. Well, my argument is I would definitely not watch this film with a woman unless she was, knowing what she was going to get into, because, in fact, you got a lot of female nudity. I mean, even by exploitation film standards, there's a lot of female nudity. I think every female character in this is totally naked at one point.
Yeah.
And there are many female characters as well. We're talking at least 20 female characters. They're all naked at one point or another. There is it is an uncomfortable scene where a woman is basically sexually assaulted for seemingly no reason by the guards.
Just for cruelty's sake.
That's not very comfortable. You got scenes of women getting things put in their vaginas multiple times.
Well, if you put it that way, yeah.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad.
Women essentially being tortured by other women.
Yeah.
Admittedly, which is, I guess, it's slightly less sleazy than something similar to this. Let's say where you would have a man torturing a woman.
Yeah, I think in my head the reason why I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad is because I'm thinking of it within the context of all the other Nazisploitation films.
That's
and when you
interesting
compare
thing,
this to, say, The Beast in Heat, this is like Carry On England. This is Hello compared to some of the others. I
mean, you're right. It's not as bad as that or Gestapo's Lost Orgy, which is the most kind of difficult. Even Love Camp 7, I would say there are bits of that where it is literally just men being leery to women for a long time, and an uncomfortably long time as well. And there isn't really the medical experiment aspect of that film as well. Whereas with this, it's just, you're right. I get, to me and you, we can watch this, have a rip-roaringly great time, and it's like, okay, that seems a little bit not sure about that, but the rest of it is like, okay, we can have a bit of a laugh with this.
If you think about your sort of collection of cult films, and people talk about, I don't know, Toxic Avenger or Razorhead or Pink Flamingos, if you had a girl that was into, trashy, shocking movies like Pink Flamingos, you could probably put Ilsa on and have a good time, but you wouldn't want to put on The Beast in Heat. So on that scale, I would say Ilsa is bottom of the first division of cult movies. You can just about get away with showing this.
And, I actually have evidence for that because
Excellent.
Mutual friend, reoffend, my
Mutual
host,
reoffend.
Mutual reoffend, exactly. So she is exactly like you described. So Ilsa Shield for the SS. We spoke about it because she watched it after we did the Nazisploitation show on the Lament configuration, and she was like, "Yeah, I really like this." Whereas something like The Beast in Heat, she was a bit like, I don't know, like
some of them are just horrendous.
Yeah,
they're endurance challenges.
So Rhea is my case study. She is my kind of like, okay, if you get it, then yes, you would probably not find this as upsetting as some of the others, but still, if you're not reoffend or someone like that, then you might be a bit like, okay, maybe don't watch this. Now, moving on to sort of owning this on DVD and Blu-ray, you in fact do own this on DVD.
I do
Tom?
have this on DVD.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. I think it's like a Dutch version. So it's in English and Dutch. Which is
do you
great.
own any like English DVDs? I swear, like half.
It's very
of your DVDs,
hard to get some of these films in English.
Admittedly, yes, this is true. But like Desperate Living, you don't have an English version of that.
I think
all your Nazisploitation films are all from like Denmark or some random country like that. It's just so funny.
When Brexit comes into full swing, I'm not going to be able to buy any bloody movies.
Oh, they have massive like import tax on them or something like that.
Yeah, get them while you can, folks. You've got like 10 months.
He's got all his priorities in place for Brexit. If you do in fact want to buy it, like Tom, now I'm not sure. You say you weren't. It's the Dutch version. You're saying
I cannot find anything on that box
That
in terms
is
of
Dutch.
a brand company. Like all I know is it's Dutch.
Is
I bought
this
that
like Your
many
Love
years
Camp
ago.
7 DVD where it's like some DVR that someone's
I
just
don't
made
think so.
their own
I don't think it's
artwork?
part of a set or anything like that.
Right.
It's just, I mean, it probably isn't copyrighted that well. So there's probably many versions, but that I bought many years ago.
Okay. I mean, if you if you did want to buy it yourself on DVD because you're a fan, there is a Region Zero version from Anchor Bay, who probably would be the most well-known company to buy a DVD like this from. They're very reputable. I own several Anchor Bay DVDs. If you wanted to buy it as a box set, now we're going to cover this in a minute because there are, as we've mentioned, other Ilsa films. There is a version from Austria, Holland, Scandinavia, and Japan. So you can get any one of those. If you wanted to buy it on Blu-ray, there is, believe it or not, a German version where I think that's a box set as well with the all three official Ilsa films on. So yeah, that would be how you do it for those. Now, quickly talking about the sequels, just before we finish the show today. So there are... Well, it's a bit of a weird chronology with the Ilsa series. So there are two official sequels and there is an unofficial sequel. So the official sequels have very bizarre names. So somehow, even though she got shot in the head,
Yes.
right at the end of Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, we have got Ilsa Harem Keeper of the Oil Sheiks.
Quite the mouthful.
Is also
That's
directed
why I just
by,
call it Oil Sheiks 1.
Yeah,
Because I
the
can't be
oil
bothered
one.
with all the...
which is also directed by Don Edmonds, which is quite interesting because apparently Don Edmonds didn't like Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS. You know, I'll just do it for the money.
I'll do
It's a
my own
piece
version.
of shit. So, but he directed the first sequel. Now you've seen that one.
I really like that one.
Okay, do you like
Has
it
a
more
great
than the
ending.
original?
No. This is the best. The original one's
This
best.
is the
Let's
best.
not mess around, Greg. She-Wolf is the best. Yeah.
Now, from what I understand, the original is the only one which is sort of full-blown Nazisploitation. The others aren't. They're more like women in prison films.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, yeah, the other ones are not Nazi in the slightest. They just take similar scenarios. So, as you say, women in prison films.
And then that was followed the year after by Ilsa the Tigress of Siberia, which is
more like
directed by
getting things back on track.
Jean Lafleur.
Tigress, She-Wolf, same thing, you know.
And that you haven't seen that one.
I have seen Tigress, but
Oh,
not in
right.
many years. So I'm a little bit dusty on that one. I seem to remember I really liked it, but I can't tell you too much about it.
And then there's a fourth Ilsa film, which is not part
weird
of the
one.
official series, which has got about 3 or 4 different alternative titles. One of the titles is Ilsa the Mad Butcher. One of them is Greta House Erna Maina. One is
Wanda the Wicked Warden. Too many W's.
Yeah, very bizarre. Where Dyanne Thorne is in the film playing a character called Greta, although it's basically Ilsa, because I've seen this, but it was a long time ago. It was for the Lament Configuration show where we did 3 Jess Franco films. I saw it then. Don't remember
all
too
the
much
Jess
about
Franco
it.
films, you chose that.
I watched about 15 Jess Franco. The man directed 200 films.
That's what I mean. Out of 200 films, you narrowed it down to that.
Well, there's a lot of crap in his back
There is.
catalogue, unfortunately. Obviously, it stars Lena Remey, because, you know, of course it does.
Of course.
And yeah, I remember it being fairly enjoyable. I mean, it's not shit, so
To my shame, I haven't seen that one. And I say
we
to my
need to
shame
put that right.
because I'm a Jess Franco fan, and obviously I'm an Ilsa fan. So, you know, I really need to see that last one. I don't know if you can shed any light on this. Why is it not an official one? I mean, and by that I mean, how are the other 3 official ones? Because they, as you've said, they're not really connected. Are they produced by the same person? Did somebody buy the franchise and then Jess Franco ripped it off? Because they're all exploitation films. So how can you have a non-official exploitation film?
I imagine probably what happened is there was a producer, an unscrupulous producer, who just decided, oh, fuck it, I want Dyanne Thorne in this film. And if we can't call her Ilsa for some reason or other, we'll give her a different name. But she's basically the same
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, is
character.
Ilsa like... Does somebody own like the character rights to Ilsa? and he let
Now
them
that
make,
would be interesting.
and he let them make the Oil Sheiks one, and he let them make Tigress, and then they didn't let Jess Franco use the name Ilsa.
Nah, sorry,
so he
Jess.
just renamed her.
You're
Because
not
that's what I
allowed.
mean. I'm like, it's not like you're going to make a knockoff Star Wars and still call somebody Luke Skywalker.
Well,
you know, like
They do make knockoff Star. Don't in Turkey they make
Oh,
knockoff
yeah.
Star Wars films.
But I just mean I don't see why the fourth one is unofficial, but the other two are. I don't see any sense of the word official meaning anything when you watch the other Ilsa films.
If anyone knows and wants to let us know, please feel free. You know, just tell us essentially.
I saw an interview recently with Dyanne Thorne. Obviously, not recently; she's dead. But I watched an old interview recently, and somebody basically asked her like how the films are connected, and the way she explained it was Ilsa is a soldier of fortune. So and that she at one point is in Nazi Germany. She's also travelled to Siberia. She's also travelled to the Middle East. Now, as you pointed out, she very definitely dies in She-Wolf of the SS. Now, unfortunately, this interviewer didn't call her out on that, so I'm not sure how it's meant. Because I don't know about you, Greg. I just took it to be that they are not connected at all. That it's a bit like, I don't know if you've seen American Horror Story, but you know, each series is like the same actors playing different roles.
I'm aware of how it works, yeah.
Same actors playing different roles. So they're not connected. They're just, you know, different versions of the same story being told with, you know, I mean, that's not American Horror Story, but that's how I view the films. In this interview, I was dumbstruck because Dyanne Thorne was basically saying, no, it's definitely the same character.
Can't be the same character, you're dead.
Unless, of course, like, Tigress is before.
Yeah, who knows? It could be.
Because, you know, like, talking about
Temple of
Nazis,
Doom
Indiana
is
Jones,
before
Temple of Doom
Raiders
is
of the
supposed to be
Lost Ark.
before Raiders of the
Yeah.
Lost Ark, so technically it's a prequel.
God knows where Short Round went then.
Yeah.
Raids of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, Short Round dies. That's all we can presume. So
Dr. Jones.
I could say, okay, Tigress, I think that's like revolutionary or Soviet Russia, so you could have that before Ilsa, before She-Wolf. Funnily enough, we don't see Ilsa's corpse at the end of She-Wolf.
No,
you see a shot being fired and some flesh
in theory,
fly off.
yeah.
So I don't know. Did she survive and run off to the Middle East to the oil sheiks? Maybe.
Maybe she was like, you know, there's some plot to like let her escape.
Maybe she has a twin. Maybe we don't know.
Greta or Wanda.
Greta.
That just could be her twin.
Yeah. Maybe she's a Time Lord. Maybe it's one of those weird, like, Doctor Who things, you know.
And I suppose I guess a nice way to end the show, because we're talking about Dyanne Thorne, who as mentioned, you know, is a tribute to her amazing character Ilsa, and passed away not that long ago. Apparently, she was, now I'm no good with kind of like official terminology, but she's someone who can marry people, whatever that is. It's not a reverend, but it's someone who's ordained. That's it.
She's
They're
ordained
to wed people, and apparently she did wed people wearing the Ilsa costume.
That was going to be my immediate question.
Minus the Nazi kind of iconography.
Okay, so you could get an SS wedding, essentially.
You could do.
With Ilsa. I mean, without the Nazi stuff, it's a bit like, well, what is it then? Just a Hugo Boss suit.
So there you go. You know, if you ever, you know, unfortunately you can't do it now, but you could have done. If it was a few years ago, you could have gone to America. And
I would love to have gone to somebody's wedding if they had
officiate your wedding for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that information.
There you go. On that note, I'm going to call it a day for the show today. I thank you all very, very much for listening. I've had a lot of fun doing this show, and I hope you've had a lot of fun listening to it. I want to once again thank Mr. Tom Dennett-Cook.
I've had a lot of fun doing this show. Thank you.
Hail to you, sir. And thank you all very, very much for listening. I'll see you on the next show for more of the worst date movies ever. Thank you for listening. You can follow me on Twitter and suggest movies for me to review at Worst Date Movies. And don't forget to click subscribe wherever you're listening to this right now to never miss any future episodes of Worst Date Movies ever.